Hope you're having a great day, everybody. Welcome into Bio Studios. Let's go ahead and kick off a new painting series. Now, as you can see, we are going to be painting the Deathly Hallow brothers, the three brothers from the Tales of Beetle the Bard. This first video is going to be me sketching out the first brother as well as the Elder Wand, the Wand of Power. So super excited with this, guys. Now, in the previous video of this playlist, which you can find in the info card above, as well as a link at the very end so you can find the entire playlist, you can see all of the awesome videos after they're all released, or watch them as they come out. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, make sure you hit the like, and let's get into this content, guys. Now, we're not going to actually be working with watercolors in this video. I decided to keep the sketching and the watercolor application videos separate. That way they're not too long. But as you can see here from this reference photo, we're going to be kind of sketching the hand, the wand. There's Death in the background there, kind of looking at the brother, admiring him, admiring the wand, and knowing that he's going to take him for his own here soon. So you can't cheat Death forever, but he kind of gave him the utensil for his own destruction there. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to kind of sketch out just a general shape. Now, the original reference photos that I'm using to kind of sketch this out are from the Harry Potter movies. They are from the Deathly Hallows Part 1. So these are in a landscape view. Now, I don't want to paint the brothers themselves in a landscape view. I want that to be a portrait view. So that way I can kind of put all of these three brothers, as well as a larger landscape full-on painting of the bridge and Death itself below these. So it's going to be one large framed art piece here, and they're just going to really have all the same color tone, and it's going to be really nice all together. I've really been wanting to paint the three brothers for a very long time, and this is just my excuse to be able to get out and do that. I will be using watercolors for these. These are going to be Master Touch watercolors, and we're only going to use Sepia earth tones. So we're going to kind of mimic, in my own style, the overall kind of color tone that we saw from the reference shots, and where Hermione is reading from the Tales of Beetle the Bard to Harry and Ron, as well as Mr. Lovegood. I almost forgot his name there, guys. Shame on me. Mr. Lovegood. So as I kind of sketch this out here, guys, I hope it's not too faded in the background there. I did lighten the video quality just a tad there, and sometimes that kind of diminishes the overall sketching pencil. I'm not using charcoal to sketch this out because I don't want any of that bleeding through my watercolors. It's not like I'm using acrylics for this. I will say, though, that I do maybe plan to come back and maybe make these later on out of like an acrylic on canvas, perhaps, or maybe like I'll do like a series of boards, and then I'll do that out of maybe just the same sepia tones, and instead I will also introduce maybe like I don't know, maybe more of like a fine-tuned color, maybe make it a little bit more opaque and less faded than the watercolor effect give us. Here I am just kind of using a pencil there just to kind of get a straight angle there for the Elder Wand coming out of his hand there. And I am going to try to capture the hand and the cloak of his neck and the head in a much darker color. So I will introduce quite a bit of black paint into that until I can really get the darkness that I want. That will be in the next video. So at the end of this one, you can click the info card at the very end, and you can see the entire video playlist, and you can kind of nitpick and choose which one you want to watch. I just didn't really want the content to run too long, you guys. Otherwise, this video would have been an hour long, and I just don't want that much. I don't want you to have to watch that long of a video. Of course you can if you want to, but I kind of like sectioning these off so I can put them on their individual playlists. So this will be found in the Deathly Hallows series playlist, as well as the actual sketching and drawing playlist. So they're kind of separated out in a way. Now, a lot of these are not full-on sketches. I'm leaving a lot of this open to interpretation, not putting too much graphite on the actual canvas itself, so the paper itself isn't going to have a ton of graphite or dust on it, but I want to make sure I'm able to capture just the general shapes for the most part. Even if I wanted to come in and kind of erase some of these marks and just leave them really faded, then I could do so. But because I'm coming in with so many dark colors over his body and around the edges of death, I'm not really worried about any of these pencil marks being visible through that paint. I tend to put more than likely more layers of paint on than I really necessarily need to. And that's just my painting style. I'll probably try to start adapting that to different paintings in the future, where I'll try to leave more of the actual white paper showing through. But I do enjoy like actually toning my paper beforehand, so it's nothing, never has like a true white background, and it's kind of a give and take. I want to find that perfect medium for the actual piece that I'm working on, and not just what I think that I should make my practice be every time I pick up a paintbrush and work with watercolors. It's the same thing for acrylics, right? You want to make sure you get full coverage of the canvas, and if you do have to paint white on white, then let it be actual like paint and not just like canvas visible through the paint. I hope that makes sense to you guys. I just want to make sure that this is a sketch that I can follow, but I'm also trying to make it a little bit visible for you guys. So finding that perfect medium and perfect ground is really important to me. Now, as you can see here, what we're doing is I'm drawing the neck out. Now, a lot of this is for interpretation, right? If the actual size and the dimensions aren't completely right, the canvas paper will just seem kind of off, and the composition just won't be there. So it needs to be similar to what you kind of expect the brother to look like. And I really poured over the reference material of Hermione reading out Tales of Beetle the Bard to try to get some good photos of the movie shots, so that I could kind of really get good references. And it's so tough to get good references from those, even if you slow it down or try to catch it at the right time, record it on video, and then kind of take still life shots of that video. It's really difficult, and there's really not a whole lot of references to their bodies, right? We watch them in the movie, and we watch the three brothers get their items and then move on with their lives and eventually get taken by death. But what we don't realize is that it really doesn't ever give a full front view of them. It's always like a side shot or like a faded watercolor like look to them, and there's really no defined features. I did my best to try to increase the contrast on some of these images so that I could even see like the lips like on this one. So for instance, this brother, he has bold lips, a broad nose. He has an inset high arched eye. He is bald with a kind of a concaved head that comes down into the neck before it goes into a beard. And that beard also has a swoop at like a goatee at the end of his chin. So I want to make sure I can kind of capture all that. And if you don't pause the movie, you may not catch all of those little details. But because I increased the contrast on the images, it really is there. It's just kind of hidden by the movements of the movie shots. It's really kind of interesting, really going out of my way to kind of capture some of those features so I can kind of portray those in at least some manner in my actual painting of these watercolors. Trying to capture the eye right here, making sure that see how high it is on his face. It just doesn't feel right, but that's the way it's going to be. His eye is really high on his arch. Originally, after looking at a lot of the reference photos, I was just kind of interested in trying to determine what race the brothers were. And I do know for one thing, looking at all the reference photos, we know that they're not white or Caucasian. Let's be honest with ourselves. And if they were not depicted in the story that way, the original artist for the movies created them with a darker tone of skin. And I'm completely okay with this. I love how it adds contrast to the overall images, makes it easier for you to see the brothers against the background. And if you increase the contrast a little bit, you can kind of see the portions of the face, the nose, the lips, and the chin where the goatee are. And they are a very dark skinned set of brothers. So whether they're African American or they're more of a brown skin tone, I think it's going to look really good. And I like the option of having just a rich level of highlights on those darker skin tones. And then we can kind of make sure that the cloak is a little bit darker than the actual skin tone itself. Now, that is, of course, the reference photo that I picked for this option here. There are a lot of them throughout those scenes in the movies that you can choose from to make yours if you ever do something similar. But those are just kind of the things I was thinking about when I was looking at those images. I don't know if you guys agree with that assessment of this, but that's where I'm taking this canvas painting, and I hope you understand why I mentioned it. It's just because that his facial features just don't scream like colonial, like white guy to me. Does that make any sense, you guys? I don't know if I should even mention that in this video, but when we're talking about the actual facial features and things like that, it can kind of lead us down different directions in the art piece, and I just want to kind of throw that in here so that you understand why I darken out his skin, and it's not all bleached out and highlighted and has super high contrast. I leave it really up to interpretation, but in my interpretation of this, he's a good looking black guy. As we sketch out Death here. Now, Death was actually kind of difficult for me when I started to paint this here, you guys. I was trying not to apply too much of black pigment and paint to that, but I wanted to make sure I introduced a little bit of raw umber and like a yellow ochre into that. So it kind of changes and evolves over time, and I slowly build up layers on that. What do you think, you guys? I hope you guys enjoyed this nice little sketching video, and I look forward to painting this in the next video. I'll catch you guys later. What is going on, and welcome back into Biley Studios. Who's ready for the Deathly Hallows brothers? Yes, we're going to start off with the eldest brother and the elder one. Of course, that is from an excerpt from the Tales of Beetle the Bard. Maybe we'll be introducing more of those tales in my YouTube channel in the future. So we'll see how this kind of little series or playlist turns out. As you can see here in the previous video of this playlist, I have already went ahead and pre-prepped all of my canvas paper here. I've also got those attached to the actual clipboards that I'm using to paint these on to just make it really easy to kind of transport them around the studio. I can also kind of clip them up to a piece of nail or a board, you know, up above my station here. And I can also just peel that off, and then I'll have my actual painted paper there. It makes things nice and easy and tidy. On the right hand side, I do have a multitude of colors here. We have everything from ivory black to burnt umber, raw umber, a little bit of raw sienna, yellow ochre, lemon yellow, medium yellow, as well as a zinc titanium white. All of these are watercolors, and they're a mixture of brands, but most of them are Master's Touch. I got them in an entire pack of them, and I've been supplementing colors as I need to from individual tubes. I also have my coffee here off to the left hand side. Yes, this is my Krispy Kreme cup that my sister got me for Christmas, and as you can see, is glowing red. As we progress through this video here, you'll be able to see that the actual red logo will fade because my coffee always gets cold while I'm painting. We have a multitude of brushes here that I'm going to use here. I don't use a whole lot of bristle brushes, like standard bristle brushes on my watercolor painting. I like to keep my things very mobile and portable as far as watercolors, and that may change in the future as I get more advanced in my watercolor paintings. But I wanted to kind of keep it simple. I almost use one brush through the majority of this entire series, but just be aware that I do use larger brushes to do the backgrounds and kind of like the halo yellow effect around the edges of the body as well as the wand. So I was kind of just showcasing some of the brushes that I do have. I've got larger like chip brushes going down into like a finer point brush here. This is the one that I use the majority of the time. It is my absolute favorite, and it's just because I'm usually working on really small canvases out in the field. Sometimes I'll do like small paintings on my lunch breaks at work, my 9 to 5. But it just gives me something to do out in a way. I do have a planner box that I kind of travel around with. And I'm always adding new materials and upgrading it as I see fit to my painting needs. Now, this is a larger size chip brush that I have in my painting palette that I use out remotely. But I'm actually going to use one from the studio here. So this is the standard, I say a medium to a large flat brush here. And I'm just going to use that kind of to dab in the background here. Let's go ahead and use my spray bottle here to go ahead and saturate my palette here. We're going to spray a little bit of water in there to get that paint activated. And then we're going to go ahead and also spray quite a bit of paint in the actual little trays here. That way I can kind of blend out different colors. Now, as I go through the same painting process for the other two brothers in the series, I will kind of keep that palette dirtied so that way I can kind of see the same blending that I had for the previous videos. Even if those other canvases do come out slightly lighter or darker, I'm cool with that as long as I just enjoy the process. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to make a little color swatch here. I do apologize, I did not zoom into this when I was making the video and the content, but I do a little color swatch, and I honestly don't even use this all that much. I really like to paint from the hip, as it were, and I really don't rely on this too much. But it is good to color swatch your colors, especially if you haven't used them in a while or if you're new to it. And then here's what we have so far. Now that ivory black, obviously I watered that down quite a bit before I applied it to the color swatch here, but look how good that lemon yellow looks. That is a beautiful color, very, very nice. So what we're going to do with this process is I'm going to begin with a large flat brush, and I'm going to go ahead and blend in the overall background. And as I add more layers, I'll kind of wash out my pencil sketch here that I made in the previous video of this playlist. You can check that out at the very end or the info card above. So we're going to begin just by kind of layering in a little bit of yellow as well as some yellow ochre, and just going to kind of darken in the background. It's a very easy process, guys. I really want you to enjoy the music and just have fun with my painting process. And some of this will get kind of sped up as I move through this video, so just be aware we're going to kind of work slow at first, and then we're going to increase speed up to 6 times speed towards the end of the video to keep it kind of short. I don't want you guys to spend hours watching this video, or maybe an hour at the most, but we're going to speed it up a little bit. I like to take my time when painting, and I don't like to restrict myself to thinking about the content when I'm making it. But otherwise, guys, just sit back and enjoy. I'm going to apply this yellow overall background here, and I'll do a few different layers until I can kind of get the glow surrounding effect that I want for the glow behind the silhouette of the elder brother, Death, as well as the elder wand. you guys. So that kind of wraps up the background for the most part at this point in time. I'm going to let that dry quite a bit before I come in with some darker tones and layers around the corners and around the outside edges of the actual canvas here. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to begin to layer in some paint on his hand, his wrist, the actual wand itself, up and around his shoulder, which will be his cloak, and then into his neck and face. Now, in the previous video, we're about to get to it, but in the previous video, I had mentioned that I believe that the overall portrayal of the elder brother in the Harry Potter movie series, the actual film, the Deathly Hallows Part 1, the elder brother is if you still life the live screenshots there, he really is very dark skinned, and they portray him as such. His neck and his bald head is a little bit darker. And I didn't mention in the video, but that previous sketching video, but I do believe that he is elder. That's maybe like he's the elder brother. That's why he's a little bit bald. But doesn't he look very dark skinned here? And I really wanted to portray that, so I do darken out his face, his beard, some of the shadows around his jawbone and his ear quite a bit, and I will continuously come back and bring up the highlights and the tones around his eyelid, his broad nose, his prominent lips there, and I think it said in the previous video, I think that he was a very dark-skinned gentleman here, and I really love that idea. So I'll go through the kind of the same process when I look into the other brothers. I do believe that the middle brother, to me, he looks like maybe Spanish, maybe Italian, because of the way his beard is, but I don't know, man. But either way, it's going to be kind of the same in general kind of paint theme overall. And the brothers in the whole like watercolor type effect video that they made, the animation, he's very darkened out there, and I really like being able to increase the overall dark saturation of the body in comparison to the background, and I think it looks really cool. Now I'm gonna do a lot of wet on wet here, and if some of my paint bleeds onto the background or bleeds outside my edges of my original sketch, then I'm completely cool with that. I really want this to be very free, very, very open to interpretation as the water does what it needs to do. So I'm not keeping it super duper tight, but I am going to kind of make it to where it's relatable to the original source material. Again, there's that face again, very darkened out there. I didn't make the cloak as dark as it is here. I did darken out quite a bit, but not that dark. So I didn't completely blacken the cloak out the way that it was in the source material, but I did keep his neck and his silhouette quite darker than what I would naturally want to do. My natural instinct is to kind of keep it light and airy, but having such a dark silhouette of a person here, right here in the front of the image, it just feels odd, but it looks really good when it's all said and done. So sit back and enjoy as we kind of like frame in the silhouette here, and we're going to go ahead and darken out his face and his skin and his beard, and then we'll start working on death here shortly. right, so here we are getting to the portion of Death. Now, Death is already kind of framed in a little bit, and you can kind of see that golden background really kind of like fades him back into the background quite a bit. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of bring him forward again, and we're going to go ahead and saturate him in browns. So we're going to use a little bit of raw umber, a lot of burnt umber, guys, a little bit of that the yellow ochre, and we're just going to work in combination here until we can kind of get the overall buildup that we want. Once I get the overall saturation of his body kind of built up, I'll kind of frame in his head where his little bit of a black cloak is, but it's kind of faded in this actual still life. As well as his jaw, his mouth. He has a little bit of a nose, and then he has almost white dimpled eyes where his eye sockets are kind of turned towards the brother. Like Death doesn't care about the wand. Death cares about taking the brother for his own because Death feels cheated, right? That's the goal of the story. The goal of the story is that the brother's so proud that he chose the wand of power, but it would be his own destruction in the long term, and then Death would get him one way or another. Death wanted it to cheat them in a way because he felt cheated. There's a lot of ways you can portray that, but that's kind of how it is. There's little minute details in the storyline that you can kind of break apart if you want to go that far, but for the most part, Death felt cheated. So we're going to go ahead and bring Death forward as we paint this process, and he's going to become more prominent. And then as I kind of get to the nitty-gritty, I'll kind of fade him backwards a little bit, introducing more of that titanium white and that yellow ochre and a little bit of yellows. And I can send him back some of his like little wisps of his cloak or his arms or his hands back into the background a little bit and make them fade away a little bit. So bring him forward, then send them back. And throughout this entire process, you'll see I'll continuously come back and darken out this cloak until we can kind of get the saturation that we need at the very end. The very few paint strokes that I do at the very end, almost off camera there, is just me darkening out the cloak until I'm super happy with the saturation. All right, so you can see here I'm kind of just like getting down to some of the nitty gritty, kind of like locking in some of those facial structures, the nose, some of the shadows around the bottom of the nose, and then along the top of it. And here we are again darkening out that cloak a little bit. I do introduce a little bit of brown in that cloak as well. Now I decided at that point I was really tired. It was kind of like almost like 12 o'clock at night. I was like, I gotta work in the morning, so I just called it quits. And this is actually session number 2. Sometimes it's good just to step away, let the entire paper or palette that you're working with dry, and then just go ahead and start from scratch. It's super easy just to super saturate that water palette again and get it reactivated. Even the parts that are kind of spread out in the trays can be reactivated and then reapplied to the canvas as need be. That's the great thing about watercolors is it's there when you need it. again, starting off immediately by saturating and darkening out the neck there, as well as the cloak. We're going to darken out continuously. And I also had a little wisp of the beard coming off and around the back of the neck there, or back of the chin towards the neck, and I almost didn't like that. I kind of got a little bit of bleedage there. So I do come back later on and I'll kind of fine tune that a little bit and just kind of fade it out a little bit, so it's just the accents of the actual beard off the back of the jawbone, as it were. Throughout the whole process, they have these little wisps that come out of like the neck area around the cuffs of their hands, and it's supposed to be like lace, right? The time in which this was supposed to have taken place, it would have been way back in time, and they would have had like really nice Victorian style clothing, I guess it would be said, and they would have like laces and cuffs and embroidery around their cloaks and cuffs. So whatever time frame that would be, and I'm assuming that's what that faded black section around the neck, around the cuffs and the arms are what they're supposed to be. It's supposed to be a little bit of lace-like fabric, and I kind of just darkened that out with a little bit of black and a faded effect. And in other paintings throughout the process, when I get to, say, the invisibility cloak, I'm going to try to make it a little bit of a checker pattern. We'll see how that turns out. Might do a little bit of practicing before I get to the actual canvas paper itself and painting the invisibility cloak, but I really want it to have a little bit of texture. Bringing those lips a little bit forward before I add some highlights to them. Just make sure they're very prominent the way they are in the actual reference photo. And like I said before, it doesn't matter really what race they are. Just I want to kind of honor the original design of the reference photo in my overall portrayal here. So this is the point in time where you're really going to start to see the face and death transform a little bit. This is when I'm really starting to lean a lot heavier into my burnt umber and my ivory black mixture here. So we're going to kind of darken out the entire back of the bald head, the neck, and the jawbone. And what we're going to do is we're going to introduce some titanium white and some yellows, a little bit of yellow, into those brown mixtures, and we're going to go ahead and bring up some of the highlights around the face, the jaw, the ear, and so forth. And we're also going to do this to Death's face itself. Death's face and his upper cloak around his face is supposed to be the darkest part of him in this image. So we're going to go ahead and give him that highlight that he needs, and then we're going to bring that pigment, the black and some rounds, down and fade them into where he would have the jaw below his face. So you can kind of like do like an ombre faded effect with the same overall ink and just push the water down. And we'll introduce the titanium white to kind of bring up some of those highlights where we would want the nose and the face to be. And we'll kind of detail those with a smaller brush as we get to those stages. As long as those eyes have like a pinpoint white insert, like pupil, that way it looks like as if he's looking at the brother itself. It'll make a little bit more sense later on in the process, but if you do look this up on your own reference, you will notice that Death is indeed looking at the brother, not the wand. Alright, so here we are. We're just applying a few last details to the actual wand itself. I did put a little bit of a bend in my wand. That just happened when I was painting it, and I'm not really too upset by it, so don't stress about that. But I am just kind of going over the fine edges with a little bit of yellow, with almost like a lemon yellow, as well as a titanium white. We're really leaning towards a titanium white because it's supposed to have more of a white hue around the outside edges of the wand. It's supposed to make it look like the wand itself is emanating power. And that's why the outside edges of the upper right and the lower right corner are darkened out in the actual image itself. It's because the wand is supposed to simulate that he's like powerful, it's glowing. So we're gonna kind of fade away the left hand side of the wand and then increase the darkness on the right hand side, and then we're just gonna let the water and the paint do its job on its own. After this, we are going to go ahead and let it sit and rest. And I do come back 2 days later in separate sessions, and I do darken out the cloak a little bit more, just increasing the overall darkness of that. So as I remove this from the actual panel here, or my clipboard, you'll see that it will darken a little bit. Here we are the next day or so, and you can see that everything's dried up here. All my paints are even dried, so it's been a day. And what we're going to do is, as you can see, I did number my tape here. It's just something easy to do later, or, to make things easier on yourself. Pull out and away from the actual paper, so try not to get any ripping. And that outside unpainted edge will be actually behind the panel board that we put over these in one piece of frame. So they'll be all one beautiful piece of artwork in a single frame, of which I have not decided yet. If I maybe sculpt a frame or add some hand details to it, I don't know what I want to do yet. Maybe I'll accent an existing wood frame with some clay pieces or something. I really do hope you guys enjoyed this sepia toned watercolor painting of the Deathly Hallows, Tails the Beetle the Bard, and this is the Elder Brother and the Elder Wand, the very first of the series. And make sure you check out the playlist linked here or the info card. I'll catch you guys on the next painting.